Jake Morrison stood at the window of Refuge Station and watched the ships trying to escape. His hands were pressed against the cold glass as he counted each vessel that managed to launch. 50,000 people lived on this station, and there was no way to save them all. Below the station, the planet Haven's End was burning. Orange flames covered the surface where cities used to stand. "How much time do we have?" Claire Bennett asked. She was standing next to him, trying to keep her voice calm. Her hands shook as she held her datapad. Jake checked the readings on the screen. 6 hours. Maybe less. The Krell ships are moving faster than we thought they would. The colonies had been alone for so long. 3 generations had passed since Earth stopped answering their calls. When Jake was a child, his grandfather told him stories about the homeworld. He said Earth had blue oceans and green forests. He said there were so many people that cities stretched for hundreds of miles. But his grandfather also said that Earth had forgotten about them. The colonies were too far away. Too much trouble. Not worth the effort to protect. Now the Krell were coming and there was nobody to help them. Refuge Station had become the last hope for people from a dozen different worlds. Families crowded into hallways that were never meant to hold so many. Children cried for homes that no longer existed. Old people sat quietly, too tired to be afraid anymore. The station's weapons were old and weak. They would not stop the Krell Armada. Captain Ellen Price was in charge of the defense fleet. Jake respected her. She had fought in every battle for the past 5 years, keeping people alive when there seemed to be no chance. But even she knew the truth. Her fleet was made of 12 cargo ships with mining lasers bolted to their sides, 3 patrol boats that barely worked, 1 old destroyer called the Horizon's Edge that should have been scrapped years ago. "We'll buy you time," Ellen told Jake over the radio. "Get those transport ships away from here." Jake wanted to believe her, but everyone knew what would happen. The transport ships were slow. The Krell would hunt them down in a few days. There was nowhere to hide in space. Nowhere to run that the Krell couldn't follow. In the command center, Greg Palmer sat at the communications station. He had been sending the same message for 3 days. "This is Refuge Station in the Outer Reach. We are under attack by Krell forces. 50,000 civilians need evacuation. Any ship, any fleet, please respond." Nobody answered. Nobody ever did. The Krell arrived early. Their ships came out of jump space like sharks smelling blood. The vessels were huge, with black hulls that seemed to eat the light around them. Weapon ports glowed with red energy. Jake had seen Krell ships before, but never this many. There were over 40 of them, and each one could destroy the station by itself. Ellen's fleet moved forward to meet them. It was like watching children fight against giants. The mining lasers hit the Krell shields and did almost nothing. Missiles exploded against their armor without leaving a mark. The Krell fired back. The cargo ship Lucky Chance exploded in a ball of fire. A patrol boat simply disappeared when a particle beam hit it. The Horizon's Edge took hit after hit. Jake could see atmosphere streaming from its hull like blood from a wound. On Refuge Station, people started screaming. Some ran for the transport ships. Others just stood still, knowing there was no point in running. Jake wanted to tell them everything would be fine. He wanted to lie and give them hope, but he couldn't make his mouth form the words. "Sir," Greg said quietly, "there's something on the scanners." Jake turned around. "What is it?" "I don't know. Multiple contacts. They're coming from the direction of Sol from Earth, but that doesn't make sense. Nothing comes from Earth anymore." Jake moved to look at the scanner display. The readings were strange. Dozens of ships moving at impossible speeds. Their signatures flickered on and off like ghosts, like they weren't completely real. The Krell had noticed too. Their formation changed as they pointed their weapons at the new arrivals. Then the ships appeared. They came out of nothing, as if they had torn holes in space itself, black hulls that seemed to absorb starlight. No running lights. No identification marks. Just silence and shadow. And there were so many of them. The lead ship was massive. It matched the biggest Krell dreadnought in size. Behind it came cruisers and destroyers, frigates and smaller ships. All of them had the same ghostly look. They moved between the Krell fleet and Refuge Station without making a sound. "Are they sending any signals?" Jake asked. His voice came out as a whisper. Greg shook his head. Complete radio silence. "Wait, I'm picking up something. A single code on an old military frequency. It's from before the colonies were even built." "What does it say?" Greg looked up at Jake. His face had gone pale. "It just says Earth remembers." The Ghost Fleet opened fire. Jake had never seen weapons like these. Beams of twisted light that didn't just break through Krell's shields but made them disappear. Missiles that moved faster than sensors could track. Strange weapons that made Krell ships fold in on themselves and vanish into nothing. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 43 Krell ships had come to destroy Refuge Station. 38 of them became clouds of debris. The other 5 ran away, jumping into faster-than-light space as fast as they could. The Ghost Fleet didn't chase them. Instead, they stayed in formation around the station. Silent guards in the darkness. In the command center, people were crying. Some were cheering. Others just stood in shock, unable to believe what they had seen. Claire grabbed Jake's arm and held on tight. Her whole body was shaking. "They're hailing us," Greg said. His voice was unsteady. "Audio only," Jake nodded. "Put it through." A woman's voice filled the command center. She sounded calm and strong. "Refuge Station, this is Admiral Beth Carter of the United Nations Space Force. Please send us the coordinates of all survivors and damaged vessels. We're here to bring you home." Jake's throat was tight. He had to try twice before words came out. "Admiral Carter, this is Commander Jake Morrison. We have 50,000 souls on this station, and 12,000 more scattered in nearby systems. But home? Earth stopped answering our calls 3 generations ago. We thought you had forgotten us." There was a long pause. When the Admiral spoke again, her voice carried a heavy weight. "Commander, Earth never forgot. We had to go silent for reasons you'll understand soon. But we never stopped watching. We never stopped preparing. The colonies were always meant to survive on their own for a time. You did exactly what we needed you to do. You survived. You held the line. And now it's time for Earth to hold it with you." Jake looked out at the Ghost Fleet, massive ships floating in perfect formation, ships that had appeared from nowhere to save them, ships from a homeworld that was supposed to have abandoned them. "Welcome home," the Admiral said. And for the first time in 3 generations, the colonies were not alone. The hours after the battle passed in a blur. Medical ships appeared from the Ghost Fleet, white vessels that seemed to materialize from empty space. Supply transports brought food and medicine. Engineering teams swarmed over damaged ships and broken station sections. Their technology was decades ahead of anything the colonists had seen. Captain Ellen Price was injured when the Horizon's edge nearly broke apart. She had burns on her arms and a cut across her forehead, but she refused treatment until her crew was taken care of. Now she stood in the shuttle bay of the massive flagship, the UNS Vindicator, waiting to meet with Admiral Carter. The ship was incredible. Every surface was clean and purposeful. The corridors hummed with controlled power. Ellen's own ship had been held together with spare parts and prayers. The Vindicator looked like it had been built yesterday, even though she knew it must have taken years to construct. Admiral Beth Carter met her in a conference room. The Admiral was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She gestured to a chair. "Please sit down. You've been through enough today." Ellen sat, but she couldn't relax. "How?" she asked. "How did you do this? The Earth we knew couldn't have built one ship like this, let alone a whole fleet." Beth walked to the window. Outside, the Ghost Fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal predators. "After we lost the first colonies to the Krell, the United Nations made a decision. We went dark. Every resource, every scientist, every factory was directed to one purpose: building a fleet that could protect our people." "That was 80 years ago," Ellen said. "We sent messages. We begged for help. Nothing came back." "We received every message," Beth said quietly. "Every single one was read. Every cry for help was recorded. But we couldn't respond. If we had sent even one transmission, every hostile species in the galaxy would have known Earth was preparing for war. They would have attacked before we were ready. So we built in silence, we tested in silence, and we waited until the moment we were needed most." Beth pulled up a star chart on the wall screen. Red dots marked Krell-conquered worlds. There were dozens of them. The Krell think they're hunting scattered refugees. They don't know we've been watching their every move, studying their tactics, learning their weaknesses. They think we're weak. They're about to learn how wrong they are. A man in uniform entered the room. "Admiral, the damage assessment is complete. The station will be fully operational in 2 days." Beth nodded. "Thank you, Ryan. Captain Price, this is Lieutenant Ryan Foster, our chief engineer." Ryan shook Ellen's hand. "We've been analyzing the wreckage from the Krell ships. Our quantum disruptors worked even better than we hoped. Their shields couldn't adapt fast enough. Quantum disruptors, Ellen repeated. We were still using mining lasers. Not anymore, Beth said. We're going to refit every colonial vessel, upgrade every station, train every pilot. The Krell pushed into human space because they thought we were divided and weak. They're going to discover that humanity is never more dangerous than when defending our own. Back on Refuge Station, the medical teams worked through the crowds. They found people who had been injured in the Krell attacks, children who were sick from malnutrition, elderly colonists who had given up hope of ever being rescued. A little girl named Sophie approached one of the soldiers. The woman wore a clean uniform with a blue and white patch on the shoulder. Sophie had never seen clothes that clean before. Are you really from Earth? Sophie asked. The soldier knelt down. Her name tag said Hayes. I am. Born in a place called Chicago. What's your name? Sophie. My grandpa said Earth forgot about us. He said they didn't care. Hayes looked sad for a moment. Your grandpa was angry and he had every right to be. But he was wrong about the forgetting part. A lot of people worked very hard to make sure we could come help you. And now that we're here, we're not leaving. That's a promise, Sophie thought about this. Do you have kids on Earth? I have a daughter about your age. Her name is Katie. She helped build some of the parts for these ships. Even the children on Earth knew about you. We all wanted to help. In the command center, Jake was looking at intelligence reports from the Vindicator. The numbers made his stomach hurt. The Krell had 300 capital ships in this sector. Across their whole empire, they had over 2,000 vessels. Admiral, Jake said over the radio, even with your technology, we can't fight that many ships. You're right, Beth agreed. Which is why we're not fighting them here. Commander Morrison, how would you like to see Earth? Jake's breath stopped in his chest. Earth, the homeworld? We're taking the survivors home. All of them. The 3rd Expeditionary Force will escort the civilian ships. Once everyone is safe, we'll show you what Earth has become. And then we'll show the Krell what happens when they threaten our people. The journey to Earth took 5 days. The Ghost Fleet's faster-than-light drives worked differently than anything the colonists knew. They didn't just jump through space. They bent it, folding the distance between stars like paper. Jake stood in the observation lounge of the Vindicator and watched as a blue and green planet grew larger in the window. He had been born on Haven's End. His parents had been born on Haven's End. His grandparents had been born there too. None of them had ever seen Earth. It's beautiful, he whispered. Admiral Carter joined him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. Wait until you see the oceans up close. They go on forever. As they got closer, Jake saw something that made him stop breathing. Earth was surrounded by massive structures. Orbital platforms that stretched for hundreds of miles. Shipyards where vessels were being built. Weapon satellites that tracked their approach. And ships. Hundreds of ships in perfect formations. This is the home fleet, Beth explained. What came to save you was the 3rd Expeditionary Force. We have 7 of them. Plus the home fleet which guards Earth itself. Over 500 ships, Jake did the math. 7 fleets like the one that saved us, plus a home defense fleet. That's thousands of ships. 3,417 capital ships, Beth confirmed. 8,000 total if you count support vessels. We've been building them for 80 years. Every person on Earth has contributed. Every factory. Every scientist. Everything we've done has been for one goal. What goal? Making sure that when our children needed us, we would be ready to help them. A shuttle took them down to the surface. Jake pressed his face against the window and watched cities pass below. They were huge, bigger than anything he had imagined. But he also saw military bases, defensive weapons, fighter craft on patrol. Earth looked more like a fortress than a home. They landed in a place called Geneva. A woman met them at the landing pad. She was older, with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her name was Patricia Cole, and she was the leader of Earth's government. Commander Morrison, she said, shaking his hand. Welcome home, though I imagine this isn't the Earth your grandfather described. Jake looked around at the military installations. No, ma'am. This looks more like we're preparing for war. Patricia smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. That's because we are. Come with me. We have a lot to explain. They went deep underground to a bunker complex. Other colonial officers were there too, including Captain Ellen Price. They all sat around a large table while holographic displays showed maps of the galaxy. A military officer named Peter Hayes began the briefing. He had gray hair and a face marked by years of hard decisions. 83 years ago, The Krell destroyed their first human colony. New Beijing. 200,000 people dead in a matter of hours. By the time we found out, they had already moved on to their next target. The display showed the spread of Krell conquests. World after world falling to their fleets. We sent what ships we had. Old cargo haulers with weapons attached. A few patrol vessels. The Krell destroyed them without even slowing down. Patricia took over. We faced a choice. Keep responding with weak forces and watch humanity die colony by colony. Or do something extreme. We chose to go silent. The silence protocol, Beth added. We shut down all communications leaving the Sol system. We let the galaxy think Earth had given up or been destroyed. Meanwhile, we built. The display changed, showing Earth's transformation, factories, shipyards, training facilities. We unified every nation under one government. We converted our entire economy to war production. We pushed our science beyond what anyone thought possible, and we sent stealth observation posts throughout space watching everything, waiting for the right moment. Jake felt cold inside. You watched us suffer. You watched colonies burn and did nothing. The room went quiet. Patricia finally spoke and her voice was heavy. Yes, we watched. We watched worlds die. We watched refugees run. We watched brave people fight with weapons that weren't good enough. And every death was recorded. Every name was written down. Commander, you need to understand. If we had revealed ourselves too soon, the Krell would have thrown everything at Earth while we were still weak. Humanity would have been wiped out completely. The colonies bought us time with their blood, and I will carry the guilt of that choice until I die. But now we're ready, General Hayes continued. The Krell think they're dealing with scattered refugees in one mysterious fleet. They don't know we have 7 forces like the one you saw. They don't know our technology is decades ahead of theirs. They don't know that Earth remembers every world they took, every person they killed. The display zoomed out, showing all of Krell space. We're going to take back every world they conquered. We're going to break their military so completely that they'll never threaten anyone again. And we're going to do it where every species with sensors can watch. Ellen leaned forward. That's total war. No, Peter said firmly. That's liberation. We have no fight with Krell civilians. But their military must be broken so completely that no one doubts Earth's ability to protect its own. Over the next few days, Jake saw Earth's preparations. Training facilities where soldiers practiced combat in zero gravity. Factories where ships were built faster than seemed possible. Scientists working on weapons that looked like magic. But what struck him most were the people. Everywhere he went, civilians spoke about the colonies with respect and determination. A factory worker named Martin, who had lost a sister 40 years ago. A pilot named Kelly, whose family had moved to the colonies 3 generations back. A teacher named Gary, who made sure every child learned the names of the lost worlds. Earth hadn't forgotten. Every person had been working toward this moment for their entire lives. On his last night on Earth, Beth took Jake to a memorial. It was a wall made of crystal panels that stretched for miles. On each panel were names, millions of them glowing in the darkness. Every person who died in the Krell attacks, Beth said quietly. Every colonist, every soldier, every child. We recorded them all. This memorial is never finished because we keep adding names. Jake walked along the wall and saw people he had known. Friends, family. His throat tightened. The Krell think we're fighting for territory, Beth said. They don't understand we're fighting for them. She pointed at the names. For every person on this wall. The Ghost Fleet isn't just a military force, Commander. It's a promise kept. Jake touched a panel where his grandfather's name glowed. What happens now? Now, Beth said, we go back to the Outer Reach. But this time all 7 fleets are coming with us. And Commander, we want you to come along. You've held the line for so long. It's time you got to fight back. The Krell had expected revenge. What they got was something much worse. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Vindicator, now serving as a tactical advisor. Around him, Earth's officers worked with calm efficiency. Display screens showed the Krell fortress at Theta Proxima, a system they had conquered 15 years earlier. The original human colony of 800,000 people had been destroyed. The Krell had built a massive military base in its place. The base was defended by 200 warships and orbital weapons platforms that covered every approach. The Krell thought it was impossible to attack. Admiral Beth Carter brought all 7 expeditionary fleets. Over 2,000 ships emerged from folded space at 7 different points around the system. The Krell had never seen anything like it. "All fleets report ready," said Commander Susan Mitchell, the Vindicator's second in command. "We have perfect positioning," Beth nodded. "Send the message." On every frequency and every language, the same words went out. "This is Admiral Beth Carter of the United Earth Space Force. Krell forces in Theta Proxima, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." The Krell response came quickly, an alien voice filled with contempt. "You dare threaten the Dominion? Your primitive fleet will be swept aside. This system belongs to the Krell now. Your people died screaming and you will join them." Beth's face didn't change. "Tactical, you are authorized to engage. Eliminate all military targets. Rules of engagement are in effect. No civilian casualties. Let's show them what it means to threaten humanity." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The First Fleet, commanded by Admiral Marcus Lee, hit the Krell capital ships directly. Quantum disruptors tore through shields like they weren't there. The Krell dreadnoughts that had won dozens of battles found themselves outmatched and overwhelmed. The Second Fleet, under Admiral Helen Shaw, destroyed the orbital weapons platforms. Long-range particle beams struck with perfect accuracy. The platforms exploded one after another, their defensive fire never coming close to the Earth ships. The Third through Sixth Fleets formed a perimeter around the system. Nothing could escape. Krell ships that tried to run were forced to surrender or be destroyed. Fighter craft from Earth's carriers hunted down every escort vessel. The Seventh Fleet, led by Admiral Carlos Ruiz, did something the Krell had never seen. They jammed all Krell communications across the entire region. The Krell military relied on centralized command. Suddenly they were blind and deaf, unable to coordinate or call for help. Captain Ellen Price commanded the Colonial Pride, a destroyer that had been refitted with Earth technology. She led a strike force against the Krell command station. The ship still had its old weathered hull, but now it carried weapons that could crack a moon in half. "All batteries fire on the command deck," Ellen ordered. "Marines, prepare for boarding." The Colonial Pride's weapons carved through the station's armor. Boarding pods launched carrying Marines in powered armor. Some were from Earth. Others were Colonial volunteers who had waited years for this moment. The fighting inside was brutal but short. The Krell were fierce, but they faced soldiers who fought with righteous anger. Lieutenant Ryan Foster led a team deep into the station. They were looking for the intelligence core, the computer system that held all the Krell's records. They found it quickly. The Krell had been careless, too confident in their defenses. "Admiral Carter," Ryan transmitted, "you need to see this. They've been documenting everything. Every world they destroyed, every population they killed. They kept records like trophies." Beth's voice came back, cold as ice. "Download everything. We're going to make sure every species in the galaxy sees what the Krell really are." The battle for Theta Proxima lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 197 Krell vessels were destroyed or captured. 3 escaped into jump space. Earth's losses were 2 frigates damaged and 34 fighters lost. 211 casualties, but all of them would survive. Jake watched as the Earth fleet regrouped. Their formations remained perfect despite the chaos of battle. Colonial ships, now upgraded and integrated, took positions alongside Earth vessels. The 2 branches of humanity fought as one. "This is just the beginning," Beth said, standing beside Jake at the window. "We have 42 systems to liberate, each one built on the graves of human colonies." Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated. The Earth fleet would arrive at a Krell-held system. They would offer surrender. The Krell would refuse. Then Earth ships would dismantle the Krell defenses with mechanical precision. Each victory was broadcast across the galaxy. Earth wanted everyone to see, but it wasn't just about winning battles. At each liberated system, Earth forces stayed to rebuild. Medical teams treated survivors of Krell occupation, both human and alien. Engineers repaired infrastructure. Diplomats made contact with other species the Krell had conquered, offering alliance and protection. The galaxy watched, and what they saw changed everything. On a Viridian Empire warship thousands of light years away, Admiral Kresh studied intelligence reports with growing alarm. The Viridian Empire had been planning to expand into human space. Those plans were being rapidly canceled. "How many ships do they have?" Kresh asked. Over 8,000 vessels, sir, and their technology appears decades ahead of ours in key areas. These quantum weapons would cut through our shields like they weren't there. Kresh studied the tactical analysis. And they built all this in secret? Yes, sir. While we thought they were dying out, they were preparing for total war. Every resource in their civilization has been directed toward military capability. What's their goal? Protecting their own, sir. They have no interest in conquest. But any threat to human lives triggers massive military response. Kresh made his decision. Update our strategic doctrine. Human space is now a prohibited zone. Any ship that crosses their border without permission will be disavowed. We will not make the Krell's mistake. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. Species that had viewed humanity as weak suddenly saw them as a sleeping giant that had awakened furious. By the 6th week of the campaign, the Krell Dominion was collapsing. Their military was shattered. Their leadership was in chaos. 35 systems had been liberated. The remaining Krell forces were retreating toward their core worlds, desperate to establish a defensive line. Then Earth did something unexpected. They stopped advancing. Admiral Beth Carter broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Every species with the ability to receive it heard her words. To all civilizations monitoring this conflict, this is Admiral Beth Carter of United Earth. For 83 years, the Krell Dominion has waged war against humanity. They destroyed 37 of our colonies. They killed over 14 million of our people. We have now taken back what was stolen and broken their military power. But we are not the Krell. We don't believe in wars of extermination. We fight only to protect our own and to ensure justice. We offer the Krell people this. Withdraw from all occupied territories, reduce your military to defensive levels, and agree to monitored peace terms. Accept these conditions and this war ends. Refuse and we will continue until your ability to threaten anyone is gone forever. This offer extends to any species considering aggression against humanity. We seek no empire. We claim no territory beyond what is ours, but we will defend our people with every weapon at our disposal, and as you have seen, those weapons are considerable. Earth has returned to the galaxy, not as conquerors but as protectors, not as victims but as a force that will not bend, will not break, and will never abandon its own again. This is our promise. The message resonated across known space. For the first time in galactic history, a species had demonstrated the capability for total warfare, but chose restraint at the moment of victory. Jake listened to Beth's speech and understood. This wasn't just about revenge. Earth wasn't trying to become the next dominating power. They were drawing a line and daring anyone to cross it. Do you think the Krell will accept? He asked. Beth looked tired. The weight of command showed in her eyes. I don't know. Their leadership is proud, but their people are exhausted. We've made sure to broadcast the truth about what their government did, what they've been hiding. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought within a society, not between them. 3 days later, the Krell Dominion sent a response. Their government had fallen. A coalition of reform-minded Krell had taken control and agreed to Earth's terms. The revelation of their military's crimes, documented and shown to their entire population, had sparked a revolution. Jake stood on the bridge of the Vindicator as the news came through. Around him, officers cheered. Some cried. Others just sat in silence, overwhelmed by the reality that it was finally over. Claire Bennett, who now served as Jake's executive officer, put her hand on his shoulder. We did it. We actually did it, Jake nodded, but he felt strange. For so long, survival had been the only goal. Fight today, hope for tomorrow. Now tomorrow had arrived and he wasn't sure what came next. What happens now? He asked Beth. The Admiral smiled, and for the first time since Jake had met her, it was a genuine smile without the weight of burden. Now, Commander, we build something better. We make sure this never happens again. We create a galaxy where our children can live without fear. She gestured to the view screen, where colonial ships and Earth vessels flew in formation. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. The Krell learned that lesson the hard way. Now it's time to show the rest of the galaxy what humanity can do when we're not fighting for survival. Jake looked out at the fleet and thought about his grandfather. The old man had died believing Earth had abandoned them. He never knew that every day, every moment, Earth had been working to save them, working in silence, building in secret, preparing for this exact moment. Earth remembers. Jake said quietly, repeating the words that had first appeared on their scanners at Refuge Station. Always, Beth replied. We will always remember. The treaty signing took place aboard the UNS Vindicator 3 weeks after the Krell government fell. Representatives from Earth, the colonial governments, and the new Krell leadership gathered in the ship's main conference hall. Observers from 37 other species watched to see how humanity would use its power. Jake Morrison stood beside Admiral Beth Carter as the Krell delegates entered. They looked smaller somehow, less threatening than the warriors who had burned so many worlds. Their leader, Counselor Vreksh, moved slowly, his body language showing something that might have been shame. Patricia Cole, Earth's Secretary General, presided over the ceremony. She spoke clearly, her words translated into dozens of languages. We gather today not to celebrate victory, but to forge a lasting peace. The war is over. Now begins the harder work of building trust. Vreksh stepped forward to sign the documents. His translator rendered his words in flat English. The Krell Dominion formally accepts all terms of the Treaty of Unity. We will withdraw from all occupied systems. We will reduce our military to defensive levels only. We will submit to monitoring by the United Earth Peacekeeping Force. We will provide reparations to all affected species and cooperate in prosecuting war criminals. He paused, then continued. We were taught that other species were weak. That conquest was our right. Your people have shown us the cost of that belief. We accept responsibility for the suffering we caused. After the ceremony ended, Vreksh approached Jake privately. Through his translator, he spoke quietly. Your people fought with honor, even in anger. The old leadership taught us to see others as prey. You showed us that prey can have teeth. It is a lesson we will not forget. Jake considered his response. We didn't want this war, Counselor. We just wanted to live in peace. Remember that. Remember what happens when someone threatens our homes. The aftermath of the war changed the galaxy in ways nobody had predicted. The existence of Earth's ghost fleet had shocked every major civilization. Within months, humanity found itself approached by species seeking trade agreements, defense pacts, or simply assurance that Earth had no plans for conquest. Admiral Beth Carter, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth Forces, spent as much time on diplomatic missions as military operations. The fleet that had crushed the Krell was now serving as the foundation for a new order, one where strength was respected, but aggression was punished. The colonies underwent their own transformation. Earth poured resources into rebuilding every world the Krell had touched. But more importantly, they established a new relationship between homeworld and colonies. The Silence Protocol was officially ended, replaced by the Unity Charter. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the new destroyer UNS Haven's Hope, attended the ceremony at Refuge Station. The desperate outpost had become a thriving hub. Its population had grown as refugees returned home. The scars of war remained, but they were healing. Secretary General Patricia Cole spoke to the assembled crowd. Her words were broadcast across all human space. For too long we were divided by distance and silence. The colonies believed Earth had abandoned them. Earth believed the colonies needed to stand alone. Both were right, and both were wrong. The colonies had to learn independence to grow strong when facing adversity. You did that. Your strength saved countless lives. Earth had to prepare for the moment when our children needed us most. We did that, though the cost was silence and pain. Today we forge a new relationship. The colonies are not dependent outposts, but equal partners. Each world has a voice in the United Human Commonwealth. Earth is not a distant authority, but a committed ally. We are one species, one people, stronger together than apart. The crowd erupted in cheers. Colonial representatives stood beside Earth officials, no longer separated by suspicion, but united by shared purpose. Admiral Ellen Price, now in charge of the Colonial Defense Fleet, addressed her own people afterward. We've been given a second chance. A chance to rebuild not just our worlds, but our entire society. Let's not waste it. Let's create something worthy of those who died to get us here. The integration of colonial and Earth forces brought challenges. Colonial crews had decades of experience making things work with limited resources. Earth crews were trained in advanced technology and formal doctrine. The two cultures clashed and blended in equal measure. Lieutenant Claire Bennett found herself training with Earth officers, learning systems she had only dreamed about. It's overwhelming, she told Jake during a break. 6 months ago, I was fixing sensors with spare parts and hope. Now I'm operating technology that can track a single ship across 3 star systems. Jake smiled. And 6 months ago, Earth's best had never faced real combat. They trained in simulations while we fought for our lives. They need what we learned just as much as we need their technology. That's what makes us stronger together. The rebuilding extended beyond military matters. Scientists from Earth and the colonies worked together, combining theory with hard-won practical knowledge. Artists created works about separation and reunion. Teachers developed lessons to ensure future generations understood both why the silence protocol had been necessary and what it had cost. On Earth, the memorial wall of names continued to grow. Now it included not just the dead, but the names of every colony, every station, every settlement humanity had built among the stars. Citizens made pilgrimages to visit, to read names and remember the price of peace. Jake returned to Haven's End for the first time since its liberation. The world was still scarred. Vast areas remained as ruins from Krell bombardment. But life was returning. Settlements were being rebuilt with Earth's help. Children who had known only fear were playing in streets again, their laughter a promise of better days. He found the memorial his grandfather had built before the world fell. A simple stone marker with the names of Haven's End's founders. Jake added a new plaque next to it. The words were simple. They held the line until help arrived. Earth remembers. Earth came. We stand united. Admiral Beth Carter visited him there, having second thoughts about deep space duty. The Haven's Hope could be reassigned to local defense if you prefer. Jake shook his head. No, ma'am. This world is rebuilding and it will thrive. But there are other colonies, other outposts that need to see Earth's flag. They need to know the Ghost Fleet isn't a story but a promise. I want to be part of that. Good, Beth said. Because we have a new mission. For 80 years we focused inward, building strength. Now it's time to reach outward again. The galaxy has many species. Some friendly, some hostile, most uncertain. We need to show them who humanity is. Not just our weapons, but our values. She gestured to the rebuilding settlement. We fight when we must, but we prefer to build. We defend our own, but we help others too. We remember our dead, but we work for the living. That's the message the fleet will carry to the stars. 6 months later, the UNS Haven's Hope departed on its first deep space mission. It was part of the new outreach fleet, tasked with exploring beyond mapped space, making contact with new species, and offering friendship backed by strength. Jake stood on his bridge, surrounded by a mixed crew of Earth and colonial officers. Claire Bennett served as his second in command. Colonial navigators worked with Earth sensor specialists. Marines from both branches trained together. They were no longer separate but unified. Navigation, set course for the Andromeda Relay, Jake ordered. Let's see what's out there. As the Haven's Hope entered jump space, Jake thought about everything that had happened. His grandfather's stories of Earth had seemed like myths. A homeworld impossibly far away. A place that had forgotten them, but Earth had come. Earth had remembered. And now, as humanity ventured back into the galaxy, they carried lessons learned from separation and reunion. The Ghost Fleet had arrived in silence, but its message echoed through space. Humanity protects its own. Cross that line and face the consequences. Seek peace and find willing partners. In command centers across human space, from Earth's fortified orbit to the furthest colony, officers kept watch. The fleets remained ready. Weapons stayed sharp. Crews stayed trained. The silence protocol was over, but the vigilance remained. Never again would humanity's children face darkness alone. Never again would Earth fail to answer when its people called. The Ghost Fleet had proven that when humanity stood united, when Earth and colonies fought as one, they were unstoppable. The scars remained. The names on the memorial wall could never be erased. But from those sacrifices came something stronger, a humanity that knew its strength, that valued unity over division, that would fight when necessary, but always sought peace when possible. Commander Jake Morrison, born on a world that once thought itself forgotten, now sailed the stars aboard an Earth vessel. He carried the banner of a species that had learned what it meant to be family. The galaxy had thought no one would come for humanity's scattered children. They were wrong. And now every species knew the truth. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors but as guardians, not as the abandoned but as the unified. The Ghost Fleet had arrived in silence, but its impact would echo for generations. Earth remembered. Earth came, and Earth would never forget again. 2 years had passed since the Ghost Fleet first appeared at Refuge Station. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Where once there had been war and fear, now there was cautious hope. Where humanity had been scattered and alone, now they stood united and strong. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the UNS Haven's Hope, reviewing reports from across human space. The ship had just completed its 15th deep space mission, this time making first contact with a species called the Tarn, who lived in the dense star clusters beyond the outer reach. The meeting had gone well. The Tarn had been friendly, curious about humanity, but also respectful of their reputation. Everyone's heard the stories, Lieutenant Claire Bennett had said after the meeting, about the fleet that appeared from nowhere, about how we broke the Krell in 6 weeks. Some species are scared of us now. Others want to be our friends. Either way, they all take us seriously. Jake understood what she meant. Before the war, humans had been seen as weak prey, scattered colonists with outdated technology. Now they were viewed as one of the galaxy's major powers. It was strange being feared and respected, when just a few years ago they had been fighting for survival. A message came through from Earth. Admiral Beth Carter wanted to speak with him. Jake opened the channel and Beth's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but satisfied. "Captain Morrison," she said, "how did the meeting with the Tarn go?" "Very well, Admiral. They're interested in establishing trade relations. They also asked if we could help mediate a border dispute they're having with the Viridian Empire. Apparently, they trust us to be fair." Beth smiled. "That's good to hear. The outreach fleet is doing exactly what we hoped. We're building bridges instead of walls. Which brings me to why I called. I want you to come back to Earth. There's something you need to see." 3 days later, Jake stood in Geneva at the headquarters of the United Human Commonwealth. The building was new, constructed to house the government that now represented both Earth and all the colonies. Inside a large auditorium, thousands of people had gathered. Colonists and Earth citizens sat together, military officers in uniform mixed with civilian leaders. Children from a dozen worlds played in the aisles. Secretary General Patricia Cole stood at the podium. Beside her was a massive holographic display showing a star chart of human space. Green dots marked thriving colonies. Blue dots showed Earth's fleet positions. White dots indicated new settlements being established. 2 years ago, Patricia began, we were a species divided and under siege. The colonies thought Earth had abandoned them. Earth had gone silent to prepare for war. We were separated by distance, silence, and growing resentment. Today we stand united as the United Human Commonwealth, stronger than we have ever been. The display changed, showing statistics. Our population has grown to 38 billion across 47 worlds. Our economy is thriving. Trade between Earth and the colonies has increased by 400%. New colonies are being established at a rate we haven't seen in a century. And we're doing all this while maintaining a military capable of defending every single human life in the galaxy. Patricia paused, letting her words sink in. But strength alone doesn't make a civilization great. What makes us great is what we choose to do with that strength. Today I want to announce several initiatives that will define humanity's future. The first initiative was the Galactic Relief Force. Earth would dedicate resources to helping species affected by war, disaster, or famine, regardless of whether they were human allies. Medical ships, supply transports, and engineering teams would be available to any species that asked for help. We were once on the edge of extinction, Patricia said. We know what it means to suffer, to feel abandoned. We won't let others experience that if we can prevent it. The second initiative was the Open Knowledge Project. Humanity would begin sharing some of its technology with allied species, carefully and with proper safeguards, but openly. The goal was to raise the general level of civilization in the galaxy, making everyone more prosperous and secure. We won't hoard our advances, Patricia explained. A galaxy where everyone prospers is safer for everyone, including us. The third initiative was the most ambitious. The Commonwealth was establishing the Frontier Initiative, a program to help any species establish new colonies and expand peacefully into unclaimed space. Earth's expertise in terraforming and colonization would be offered freely. The galaxy is vast, Patricia said. There's room for everyone to grow. Competition for resources led to the wars that nearly destroyed us. We can build a different future, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. Jake listened to these announcements and felt something shift inside him. Earth hadn't just become powerful. They were using that power to make the galaxy better. It was the kind of future his grandfather would have wanted. After the ceremony, Jake met with Beth and Patricia in a private conference room. Admiral Ellen Price was there too, along with several other senior officers from both Earth and the colonies. "We wanted you to hear this first," Patricia said. "We're creating a new branch of the service, the diplomatic fleet. Its mission will be to represent humanity throughout the galaxy, to build relationships, and to intervene when conflicts threaten peace. We want you to command it." Jake was stunned. "Me? Ma'am, I'm just a colonial officer who got lucky." "You're a colonial officer who held the line when everything was falling apart," Beth corrected. "You understand both Earth and the colonies. You've seen the worst of what war can do, and you've seen what peace can build. That makes you perfect for this job." Ellen nodded. "She's right, Jake. We need someone who remembers what it was like before the Ghost Fleet arrived. Someone who won't forget why we're doing this." Jake thought about it. He thought about his grandfather, who died believing Earth had forgotten them. He thought about the children on Refuge Station who had cried in fear. He thought about all the names on the memorial wall, all the lives lost to war. "I'll do it," he said. "On one condition. The diplomatic fleet has to include officers from every colony, not just as tokens but as equals. We build this together or we don't build it at all." Patricia smiled. "We wouldn't have it any other way." 6 months later, the diplomatic fleet was officially established. 12 ships designed not for war but for peace. They carried diplomats, scientists, engineers, and cultural specialists. They were armed because the galaxy could still be dangerous. But their weapons were a last resort, not a first option. The flagship was named the UNS Unity, a vessel that combined Earth's advanced technology with design elements from a dozen different colonies. Its crew was a perfect mix of homeworld and frontier personnel, working together as one team. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the Unity's bridge for the first time and felt pride swell in his chest. This was what they had been fighting for. Not just survival, but the chance to build something better. Their first mission took them to a region of space where two species, the Tarn and the Kelvan, were on the brink of war over a disputed system. Both sides had asked humanity to mediate, trusting Earth's reputation for fairness. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Jake and his team listened to both sides, examined the historical claims, and proposed a solution. The system would be jointly administered, with both species sharing its resources. Earth would provide technology to make sure the sharing was fair, and would station a small peacekeeping force to prevent conflicts. Both sides agreed. A war that could have killed millions was prevented through diplomacy backed by strength. "This is what we should be doing," Claire said afterward. "Using our power to help people instead of hurt them." Jake nodded. "My grandfather used to say that the measure of a civilization isn't how well it fights, but what it chooses to fight for. I think we're finally living up to that." Back on Earth, the memorial wall had been expanded. Now it included not just names of the dead, but also names of the living. Every child born in the colonies. Every person who had survived the wars. Every family reunited. The wall had become a celebration of life, not just a reminder of death. Sophie, the little girl who had met Corporal Hayes at Refuge Station, was now 10 years old. She lived on Earth now, attending school with other colonial children. She had friends from a dozen different worlds. Her generation didn't remember the separation, the fear, the belief that Earth had abandoned them. For them, humanity had always been united. One day, Sophie's class visited the memorial wall as part of a history lesson. Their teacher, a woman named Julia who had once served on a colonial defense ship, explained the significance. "This wall reminds us of 2 things," Julia said. "First, the cost of division. When we were apart, we were weak. People died who didn't have to die. Second, the strength of unity. When we came together, when Earth and the colonies fought as one, we became unstoppable." Sophie raised her hand. "Teacher Julia, my mom says she thought Earth had forgotten about them. But Earth never forgot. Why didn't they just say something?" Julia knelt down to Sophie's level. "Sometimes saying something would have made things worse. Earth had to build in silence so they could help when the moment was right. It was a hard choice and people suffered because of it, but it was also the choice that saved humanity. That's what makes history complicated, Sophie. Sometimes there are no perfect choices, only difficult ones. The children walked along the wall, reading names. Earth names and colony names all mixed together. A testament to a species that had been broken and remade itself stronger. 5 years after the Ghost Fleet first appeared, humanity held a galaxy-wide celebration. The Festival of Unity brought together humans from every world and invited representatives from allied species. On Earth, in orbit around colonies, aboard stations throughout space, people gathered to remember where they had been and celebrate where they were going. Admiral Beth Carter, now semi-retired but still serving as an advisor, stood with Jake on the observation deck of the Unity. Below them, Earth gleamed in the sunlight. Around them, ships from across human space flew in formation, a display of unity and strength. "Do you ever think about that day at Refuge Station?" Jake asked. "When the Ghost Fleet arrived?" Beth nodded. "Every day. It was the moment everything changed. The moment we proved that Earth hadn't forgotten, that promises kept matter, that family means something." "The Krell are quiet now," Jake said. "Their reformed government is actually working with us. The Viridian Empire wants trade agreements. Species we haven't even met yet are sending messages asking for contact. It's like the whole galaxy shifted." "Because it did," Beth said. "For too long, the galaxy operated on the principle that might makes right, that the strong prey on the weak. We proved there's another way. That strength can be used to protect instead of conquer. That being powerful doesn't mean being cruel." She turned to look at Jake. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, proud of all of us. We kept the promise he thought was broken. We proved that Earth remembers." Jake thought about his grandfather, about all the people who had died believing they were alone. "I wish they could have seen this, seen what we built from the ashes." "They can," Beth said, gesturing to the memorial wall visible on a display screen. "Every name on that wall, every person who held the line, they made this possible. We're living the future they fought for. That's the best memorial we could give them." As the celebration continued, fireworks exploded in orbit around Earth. Not weapons this time, but celebrations. Colors bloomed against the darkness of space, visible from the surface and from ships throughout the system. Children watched in wonder. Adults watched with tears in their eyes, remembering when the skies had been filled with weapons instead of joy. The Ghost Fleet, once a desperate salvation, was now a promise fulfilled. Earth had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors but as guardians, not as the abandoned but as family reunited, and across human space, from the oldest settlements to the newest colonies, a single message was broadcast. The same message that had first appeared on Refuge Station scanners years ago. "Earth remembers. Earth came. We stand united." It was a promise that had been kept, and it was a promise that would never be broken again.